Hi everybody and welcome back to A Dinosaur in the Library. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to me ramble. So this video is coming to you from the past because I'm filming this on Thursday night just so I will have one to upload at the beginning of next week. Because I will be out of town the beginning of the week going to get my mother-in-law and she will be with us most of the week and visiting, so I probably won't be making any videos, or I may just make Top 5 Wednesday. We'll see. Anyway, I wanted to have some content to put up next week, so I'm doing this. And hopefully I'll get this one put up Sunday night. We will see. It may get put up Monday morning. Anyway, so what I'm going to talk tonight about is No Name Calling Week. So the Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network, which is usually seen as GLSEN, abbreviated everywhere, has a program they call No Name Calling Week. And this happens every year at the beginning of the year, usually in January. I think it's always in January. This year it's the 19th through the 23rd, so it starts on Monday. And the idea is really simple. It's to celebrate kindness, to not treat people badly, to just don't call people names, don't treat people terribly. And that seems like a really simple idea and maybe even simplistic in a way. But if you stop and think about it, especially when you're talking about very small kids, what's the first thing they want to do is they want to call people names. And they grow up thinking that that's an acceptable thing to do if nobody teaches them otherwise. And as a person who was bullied in that way for my entire school career, from being from very small elementary school all the way up through graduating high school, I know what that can do to a person. It damages how you interact with people. It changes how you interact with the world. It damages your relationships that you build later and the ones that you have as a child. You don't know how much it changes how you look at things until you grow up and start looking back. And it's a very important topic, just to put it very succinctly and very simply. It's very important, and I absolutely love it, and I try to promote it when I can, and I am doing that now. So it started, so I picked out 5 books that I'm going to talk about tonight that I really like. They're just amazing books for one reason or another. 4 of them are for, 3 of them are for young adults. One of them is for adults, and one was written for adults, but is usually treated as a young adult book. And then the book that actually started the entire project for GLSEN. And so it started, and I've got the synopsis on my phone from GLSEN because they do a much better job of condensing it than I do. So the book that started it all is The Misfits by James Howe. And if that name sounds familiar, you may have read the Bunnicula books as a child or recently. My wife still has all of them somewhere back here on my children's shelf. So he wrote the Bunnicula books. This is the same one. He's gay and he writes other things besides Bunnicula. And I did not read this as a child. I was pretty old. In fact, I think I was in library school getting my master's when I found this book. Because I found No Name Calling Week. So, yeah. Anyway, this is about 4 friends in the 7th grade, and they're bullied because of height, weight, how smart they are, and sexual orientation / gender expression, and they get tired of putting up with it. So they get together and start the No Name Party in school elections. And they end up having a no-name calling day throughout their school. And, of course, this is where GLSEN got the idea and started having a week. And so it's a whole week based around the idea of not being a jerk. The, first law of the Church of Will Wheaton, do not be a dick. And that's just very blunt. Don't be a jerk. Celebrate kindness is a hashtag that they use for this week, and I always try to do my best that week to be extra kind and remember what it was like. Not that I bully people. Let me just put that out there first, because you people don't know me that well. So let me just say that I don't bully people. It's not like I bully people the other 51 weeks of the year, and I decide this one week that I'm going to be a nice person. No, but I just try to be extra nice and try to be mindful of the fact that everybody you meet is fighting a battle of some sort. And so the best practice in my mind is to be kind always. Everybody has a bad day and we get grumpy, but, you know, other people are going through things as well, and it's always best to remember that. So this is the book that started it all. If you have not read it, please do. It's a young adult book. It's a pretty quick read, really good read. Started a movement, so there you go. And also, can we talk about the fact that I matched the book cover today? This was not on purpose. This is my favorite article of clothing right now, and I did not even pay attention to the fact that I match it, and I'm kind of in love with the fact that I'm matching this book for this video. So there you go. Okay, so the first book I picked to talk about is a classic that a pretty good number of people have read. I was actually surprised when I got older and found out that not everybody in the entire world was required to read this book, but I'm from Alabama, and it's kind of almost required reading. They'll kind of pull your Alabama card if you have not read it, and that is Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. And if you have not read this, do yourself a favor, go pick it up now. It is out in about a cajillion different editions. This one is the mass market. It's like $6. The library, I guarantee you, has about 1 billion copies of this. At least one copy. And if they don't, you need to speak to your library's manager and ask them why they do not have a copy of this book, because I think everybody needs to read this. So if you've seen the movie, you've lost a lot of the brilliance of this novel. However, it is a really good adaptation. It's very close, and oh my God, Gregory Peck as Atticus Finch. Lesbian though I am, they just don't make them like that anymore. They just don't, right? So it's a novel that covers prejudice and racism in a small Alabama town. Pre-civil rights movement, early civil rights movement. I can't remember the exact year because I'm a terrible Alabamian apparently. But it follows 2 children. And this was actually written for adults, even though it's treated as a young adult and children's book. Most people think of it as something that high schoolers read, but this was actually written for adults. And one of the main reasons people think of it as a children's book is because the main character, the narrative voice, is through the eyes of Jean Louise Finch, also known as Scout. But she's a grown-up when she's telling this story. So people forget that. But it's Jean Louise, who everybody calls Scout, and her brother Jim, their father Atticus. And I won't give away any of the story just because it's too brilliant for you not to experience on your own. But it covers racism and prejudice, and it's just amazing. So please, please, please read this book if you have not. And if you have read it, go read it again. It won't kill you. It will only make you a better person. So the next book is really in here for fun, but it's in here for a good reason. I'm sorry. So this is by the author of one of my favorite, or by the creator of one of my favorite comics of all time, comic creations of all times, and that is Opus the Penguin. And this is called Flawed Dogs by Berkeley Breathed. I think that's how you pronounce it. And I don't know how well you can see the cover, see the dog. He's missing a leg, so he has a soup ladle. The one on the back is strapped to a skateboard because he's missing legs. There's some more on the back. He's only has 2 legs, so he has to hop. This poor little creature is missing most of his hair. And these are what are deemed damaged or ugly dogs, flawed dogs. So the whole book is about how it doesn't really matter if you're not a purebred or you're not perfect. You can still be lovable, you can still love, you can still be worthy of existence in the world. And I think that even though it's about dogs, I think that, and it's for children, it's for middle grade, I think that they'll get the message. It's not like it's a very deeply hidden message. This is not analyzing some deep text. This is pretty on the surface here. And it's just a really adorable book, and I think it would be an excellent book to use with children just to show a different kind of perspective. So go ahead and get this one as well. The next one is a book that when I read it for the first time, which was only about 3 years ago, so when I started, about 2 years ago, I guess, when I started library school to get my master's, shortly after I did, I started working as a graduate assistant in the library that houses the juvenile collection and the library science and communications texts at my university. And I was partially in charge of doing displays, and I always did the display for the the LGBTQ History Month and LGBTQ Pride Month. And through that, I found Annie on My Mind by Nancy Garden. And this is a different cover than the one I read in the library, but this just happens to be the one that I found in the used bookstore the day I bought it. So when I read this, I literally wept for the 16-year-old me who did not have this book. This came out in the early 80s, so this would have been around when I was struggling. And according to the catalog, my hometown library has it. I don't know if they had it when I was there as a teenager, but if they did, I never found it. And I desperately wish that I had. So this book follows Liza and Annie. Liza lives on one part of town, Annie lives in the other. They happen to meet each other one day at the museum. And before this, Liza had never really questioned anything about her sexuality, but she suddenly realizes that her relationship with Annie is a little bit deeper than a friendship, and she realizes that she's falling in love with her. And this book is all about her coming of age and her coming out to herself and learning about her identity. And it's very, very early 80s, so there are a few things that happen that may or may not happen now. Depends on where you live. There's some adults that get involved, and there are, of course, problems. But I will give you this much of a spoiler, because pretty much if you look it up online, this is going to tell you this. It's one of the few books about teenage lesbians or gay people, especially from that era, that ends happily. So it's usually a tragic ending. Somebody commits suicide, or they get thrown out of their house, or there's a huge blow up or something. And this was one of the first few that didn't do that. So not only is it just a beautiful book and has amazing things in it, it also is one of the better books like this. And I just want to, I won't do this very often, but this book really, I read a portion of this every year at the when I can, at the Banned Books Week readout, and I always pick one of two sections, and this is one of them. So Liza is in her house, and she's realized that she's gay, so she goes downstairs and she gets her dad's encyclopedia. I went downstairs to Dad's encyclopedia and looked up homosexuality, but that didn't tell me much about any of the things I felt. What struck me most, though, was that in the whole long article, the word love wasn't used even once. That made me mad. It was as if whoever wrote the article didn't know that gay people actually love each other. The encyclopedia writers ought to talk to me, I thought as I went back to bed. I could tell them something about love. And I don't know what to say. Oh my God. 16-year-old me needed this. And I guarantee you that there are 12, 14, 16-year-olds out there right now who desperately need this book. Hell, there are 30-year-olds that need this book. I needed this book. It was just amazing. So, another amazingly brilliant book for you to check out if you have not yet. So, the next one is by one of my all-time favorite authors in the entire world. He usually writes adult books, but he's written a few, I think 2 for young adults, and that is Sherman Alexie, and this one is the absolutely true diary of a part-time Indian, and there's lots of illustrations scattered throughout, none of which I flipped to, right? So lots of illustrations, and this is about Junior, who is living on a reservation. And in case you don't know, Sherman Alexie is a Coeur d'Alene, yeah, I can't remember. He's 2 different tribes. He's Spokane and Coeur d'Alene, excuse me. I couldn't remember for a minute. Sorry, Sherman. But he grew up on the reservation, and all of his books and short stories are set in those areas with Native American characters. Brilliant Native American characters. Let me just say, if you've ever heard of the movie Smoke Signals, that's based on a book of short stories, primarily one short story in a particular collection. This book is not. an adult book. This is a novel for young adults about Junior, who decides to go off the reservation and go to the white school in the next town over. And there's a lot about bullying, about racism, about poverty, about just everything. And it is amazing. You need to do yourself a favor and go out and read this. And then I need you to go out and pick up everything Sherman Alexie has written, because it needs to be in your life. If you don't know anything about Native American culture or reservation culture, you will learn a lot. And they're universal stories. Even though they're specific to this culture, they are very universal in nature in a lot of things. You know, it's about how things are tied together and about how life is hard. Dang it. But it doesn't always have to be completely hard. And maybe that's my own interpretation of some of his stuff. But please go check him out. And the last one I discovered because I took a graphic novel class, graphic novels in libraries, a couple of summers ago, and the professor, who's now my major professor, and I follow like the plague, recommended this to me because I was doing a project on LGBTQ graphic novels, of which there are not as many as one might think. They're getting better. There are more of them. But this one is called Stuck Rubber Baby, and it's set back during the Civil Rights Movement in Mississippi. Yeah, I think so. But it's in the 60s, and it covers racism, prejudice, homophobia, everything. This is written for adults, so it does cover things like lynchings and, raids on gay bars, things like this. So it just depends on, whether or not you want to read something like that. But it is a brilliant graphic novel, and I highly recommend you pick it up. So I have rambled on for quite some time tonight, but I really thought this was an important video to make, and I hope that you will all join me in celebrating No Name Calling Week, and also telling everybody that you know about it. And even if you don't want to do that, just simply be more mindful of being kind this week. Celebrate kindness. Don't be a jerk. If you're grumpy and you know it, I have grumpy days, but try to be mindful and not take it out on the world around you. And just be kind, everybody. And I hope everyone has a wonderful week, and I will see you back in my next video. Bye.